It's because I'm watching it. It's taking its time. That's a long minute. Oh, there it is. We'll call the meeting to order and stand for the pledge of the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
No.
It's been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The agenda is approved. Approval of the December 13th minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved as printed. We have limited public comments. None? Then we will move on to construction code report.
Morning, everybody. Hi, Chris.
Good morning.
We signed a contract with BSNA for the online permitting on December 8th. We've got a meeting scheduled on January 29th to begin the implementation. We're hoping at some point in February we'll be live with it out to the public. Okay? We're still in conversations with equalization in the treasurer's office for going to the cloud with BSNA. Those conversations are continuing. We're trying to get another meeting set up with all of us so we can sit down and, we've got some numbers put together now so we can sit down and go over that. Hopefully, my goal, personal goal is, hopefully March, we can come to you guys with something for the, going to the cloud. Okay? Any questions on any of that? I'm gonna turn it over to Brandy to go over the master.
You had a question here?
Yeah, just real quick, can you remind me what the impetus is for needing the cloud on BSNA?
For what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What is the reason that we're even considering having the cloud services as part of BSNA?
Well, for one, it'll take some of that pressure off of our IT department. And for two, it'll make it more user-friendly for all of my inspectors out in the field. There's also benefits for the treasurer's office, and there are benefits for the same reason for equalization and property descriptions for them when they're out in the field. Because we'll be able to have immediate access. When I turn in a result out in the field, the girls will have be able to see it immediately. Right now, they have to wait till I get back. Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yep, I'm gonna turn it over to Brandy. She's gonna go over the master plan update with you guys.
Hi. So the Planning Commission at their December 5th meeting moved to recommend approval of sending the master plan out for the 63-day review as required by PA 33 of 2008. They are requesting that the Board of Commissioners, when they approve it to send out for review, actually relinquish the right to do the final approval on that master plan, if there are no changes. So during the 63-day review, if there are no changes to the master plan, the resolution that is put before the Board of Commissioners is to allow the Planning Commission to have the final approval of the master plan.
Yes.
It is allowed per the state act.
Why?
To simplify the process, it makes it one less meeting and a little bit less confusing for the townships and for the public.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, we'd simply be asked to approve it. We'd approve it here probably, and then,
I'll
Yeah.
just, Madam Chair,
Yes, Jim.
I just, because I talked, Claudine approached me about this, and we talked about it. And it was, if nobody, I suggested to let the planning commission, if there's no changes, But if the board here wants to look at it, and, I mean, wants to look at it and go through it, that's fine. But, that was the suggestion that I made.
And it is important to note that is if there are no changes. So during that 63-day review, if any of the cities or villages or townships within Eaton County or surrounding Eaton County have no comments or changes, then we're asking that the Planning Commission have the final approval. If there are changes, it will definitely come back to the Board of Commissioners.
Any other questions, Brandy?
I don't have any other questions, but we have also scheduled a training for the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals to take place on February 6th. It is through MAP, Michigan Association of Planning, Stay in Your Lane and Building Bridges. There's been a lot of questions recently, specifically at the Planning Commission level, regarding regulations under other departments, whether it be the Road Commission, the Drain Commissioner, or MDOT. So myself and Mr. Garrison thought that this was a good training for the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals to kind of hone in on what they are to regulate. And the Marijuana Zoning Ordinance Committee will be reviewing the interpretations regarding marijuana facilities within our zoning ordinance. Where can they potentially be located under our current land use language? That has been reviewed by our attorney and approved as of this week. Zoning Ordinance Committee will review it next week at their January 16th meeting, and then that application would go in front of the Board of Appeals for an official interpretation.
There is a resolution in your packet for the master plan that they spoke of first that would need some action today.
To move it to the board. It's moving it to the Board of Commissioners for that purpose.
So it's moving it to the board to release it for the 63-day public process, and if there are no comments, giving the authority of the final approval to the Planning Commission, is what this resolution would do.
So,
Jim, you're not talking in your mic. Thank you.
So you got some reservations on it?
Well, I just not. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about it. I just the concept of not having the conceptual last say. So the idea is, in this theory, the only pitfall I suppose we could find is potentially the Planning Commission could make some type of change or amendment. No, they can't.
No. If there are any changes, once it's sent out for the 63-day review, it will be coming back to the Board of Commissioners. That's the way the resolution is
Planning
written.
Commission can't make any change.
No.
I'll move it.
Is there support?
What page is it on? I can't find it in my packet.
It's just page 5, the resolution.
the master plan's not in it.
Is there a second or support?
Master plan was sent out.
The master plan was a link in the Construction Code Planning and Zoning Report. It's a couple hundred pages long, would be my guess. That's why it wasn't provided as part of the packet. It was a link.
A Sybaris link went out, and it was included as a link within our report. It is on our website, both under Planning Commission and Master Plan Update. It's actually the 2024 to 2044, because it's a 20-year plan that's supposed to be reviewed every 5 years.
Well, I guess I missed that, because I didn't see that. I mean, it went from being concerned about having the last say to adopting a resolution for a plan that I don't think any of us have looked at. So the theoretical idea that we'd have the last say, because we'd actually know what was in it, is kind of moot here. We're going to send it on to the board for it to be released for its 60 days, and then it's out of our hands, unless there's a change. So Jim says it's okay. All right, I guess I'm not looking forward to reading 200 pages of some report, but still, I'm passing something on to the board of which I have absolutely no idea what's in it. Or at least I'm being asked to.
Are you saying that you would like to see a printed copy?
Well, I'll go back through, Barb, and find the link. But, I mean, if you're asking me to vote on something today of which I don't know what's in it, I guess I'm reluctant to do that. At the moment, you don't have a second, so it's, I mean, is there some, I suppose we could all spend the next week looking at it until the Board of Commissioners. It's
Yes.
Well, I guess I'll put Jim on the spot, just because I haven't really been involved in this process, but Township's thoroughly involved in this process, right?
Yep.
You haven't heard anything negative. They've had their opportunity to talk to constituents, and, I mean, vetted from the standpoint of township governments have been involved, right?
So this has been going on, I mean, we started what?
August
Ye-
2020.
Yeah, so, and there's been extensive meetings and, I mean, gone over detailed, so, in my opinion, if you want to read it and not pass it, I mean, that's up to this board, but,
I mean, I don't know what kind of minutia we think that we would find if there's more involved people than myself, people on township boards who have that conversations with constituents. I mean, I'm happy to second it. It's just, I'm not going to read it because I'm not an expert in, township planning beyond my own borders of Delta Township. So, I mean,
and that was kind of my thought with talking with Claudine and going through with this process, but it doesn't matter to me. That's up to the board. If you guys want to read it and wait, it's up to you.
Like, did you ever hand up?
I did. You want to second it so we can talk about it?
yeah, second.
Okay. Randy, I'm confused about the process. I mean, you're saying that if there's no changes, the only changes that can happen have to go to the board so that they can change it. You can't just change it arbitrarily. A change has to be brought to the planning board. So my question about process is, if there's no change, then the planning board can approve it. If there is a change, the planning board still has to create the change. No change can be made unless the planning board does it,
That
right?
is correct. There'll be a public hearing regardless.
Yeah.
If there are recommended changes, the planning commission will have to have that
And
discussion.
who would recommend that? Staff or who, I mean, someone from the public is gonna come into some meeting?
Any one of the agencies that we send it out for the 63-day review, including township, cities, villages surrounding Eaton County as well, public utilities, MDOT, the road commission, drain office.
Right, and those are the groups that really could throw a monkey wrench into it because they have their own criteria.
It would be potential if they weren't involved in the entire process of creating this document.
Yeah, okay. So basically, if there's no changes, I mean, the change has to, I'm just saying the change has to happen at the planning board level.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
If there were a change, yes, then it would come back to the Board of Commissioners.
And then would it need another public hearing if there's a change in it?
Yes, the planning commission will have the public hearing, and then they will make their recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now that we've had the 2024 year kicked off with controversy, what's next?
Financial report?
Chris, you still have a financial report on there. Yeah, but if anybody has any questions. The financial report for construction code is in your packet, so if you have any questions, Chris would be happy to answer them.
He's trying to hide something. He ran out the door.
Trying to go to work.
Are there any questions on the financial report? Do we need a motion to approve it?
No.
No? Okay. There's
Now you're
there's no
good.
questions. Thank you, thank you.
Hi.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes. Okay, we have a DIA update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, it finally happened. Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy sent the notice on December 20th of the initiation of the material management planning process with the start date of 1/8/2024. This starts our 180-day period that the county must affirm that the Board of Commissioners will prepare a material management plan and function as the county approval agency. And the county approval agency must consult and document potential multi-county cooperation with adjacent counties. Any questions regarding this wonderful update? Well, it means we have to start getting working on this material management planning. We have 180 days to determine that the Board of Commissioners does in fact want to act as the county approval agency. And from there, the county approval agency has to, in this step, contact local counties to discuss potential partnerships. I've personally spoken with my counterparts at every county around us except Jackson. So I know that they're talking to their people, they're ready for this, they're waiting for it. Well, we can turn down, the Board of Commissioners doesn't have to be the county approval agency. If we turn it down, then it goes to potentially, townships can choose to work together. And if they choose not to, then Eagle would get to write our management plan for us.
Joe?
Where are we in terms of hiring? Because I think one of the things that was discussed last year was the idea of getting somebody on board who would be able to work on this plan.
Yes, we have another interview scheduled this week with an individual. Not easy to find. We had one back out and another turn the job down, so.
So we have 6 months to decide whether we're going to do the plan or 6 months to do the plan?
No, in this period, this first 180-day period, we have to decide whether the Board of Commissioners wants to be the county approval agency, and then to contact local counties for discussions. We have to send Eagle a notice of intent that we do or do not intend to write the management plan ourselves, and document that we spoke with the counties. After that 180 days, then we move to the next section of the planning, which would be to actually set up the planning agency.
Okay. Well, I think we should be the writer of the plan, but I think it might be contingent, and hopefully it won't take another 6 months to bring somebody on board who can, we can give this task to, among other things. So, I mean, I take it there's nothing we need to do today, right? You're just kind of.
No, it's really just letting you know. And of course, obviously, the full board needs to know that, for a year now, I've been coming in here saying soon, 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 and it actually finally happened, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Blake?
When we, looking at the plan and the cooperation with our neighboring counties, Ingham County is like 3 steps ahead of us. They probably already have a plan.
I have met with Ingham County, and when it comes to actually recycling, I would say they're actually quite a ways behind us. Really, everything there is pretty much privatized. They don't have their own specific recycling centers that they work with like we do. Their rural counties, or their rural areas really don't have a lot of access to recycling. So in this particular, strictly in the recycling realm, they really don't have much of a foot in that.
Okay.
So the materials management plan is new. Nobody has one. It's new from Eagle, from the state of Michigan, that every county or a designated agency creates this new management plan. So it's new, no one has one. I asked if they could even give me an example from like out of state, so we would know what we were looking at or looking for, and they couldn't make any recommendations for any to even look at from anywhere. So everybody's in the same boat countywide, everybody's gonna be working towards the same thing. The intent would be obviously to create that in-house, but I mean, we could hire a consultant to come in and help us write it too, I suppose, if that's the desire.
Well, and I'm afraid it'll become something larger than what we think it should be. We might get it not only, we're obviously talking about household recycling and whatnot, but it can grow into asphalt shingle recycling, steel recycling. I mean, the scope can really get to be way beyond what we're talking about here. And I want to make sure that, we have that clearly defined as we go into the future with our planning,
Reading through the plan, it does not specifically say that you have to take this material or that material or that material. It is just updated plans that put an emphasis on recycling over landfilling. From what I've read of it, I don't see anything that says that they're going to force us to take any particular materials.
Well, that's really what I don't want to go down that road. I understand that this is, I'm all in favor of household recycling. I'm all about that. Starts getting into some of the larger things, it becomes something else.
Yeah, but from a practical standpoint, Blake, if the state were to force us to take the types of items that you just mentioned, they're going to force us to do that regardless of whether we write the plan or the townships write the plan or they write the plan. I mean, if it says you will include within this plan A, B, C, and D, then we're going to have to do that. And if you're afraid of where this takes us in terms of the future, then the only way that you have any real guarantee of having some control is if we write the plan. If we turn it over to the townships, it's theirs. And if we turn it over to the state, it's clearly out of our hands. So, I mean, I go back to what I said before. I think we want to be the ones who write the plan. But I think we need to fill that position that it seems to be hard to fill, as well as any other reorganization that we want to do with that particular department. This reminds me of when that caused us to create the DIA to begin with, was the state came down and said, you're going to write some kind of plan. You're going to have a plan in terms of waste, because we think we're going to run out of landfill space within the next, 5 years or whatever it was. And so every county's got to put together a plan of what they're going to do with their solid waste. And they have to show a contract with, or an agreement with, one of the landfills as to who's going to take their waste. And so I see this as the same thing. And 30 years later, it's a new idea. What are you going to do with your waste? Where's it going to go? How are you going to defer it from the landfills again? So we've done this once, some of us.
I think within the plan, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to agree to take every single material through the county. It could be private haulers or private companies that are participating also. We could ask the haulers or mandate that the haulers pick up more materials. So it's not necessarily just that we have to accept everything countywide in a county recycling center. There will be some options.
Have we talked to the MRC, the Michigan Recycling Coalition, to kind of get this kind of statewide view of what, because I feel like we shouldn't have to do this by ourselves. Everyone else is figuring out this at the same time. And if they're working with other counties, maybe we can like leverage some best practices.
Yes, I have attended every meeting in person and via Zoom that the MRC has held since this began. And I can't say that I took a lot out of them. So they, while they have been somewhat active in it, it's more that they've been telling us it's going to happen, prepare for it, going over just the basics of it. They haven't really at this point offered any significant help.
Because I think of like the Michigan Association of Counties with the OUD planning, like they're kind of a good like technical resource. Like it's just unfortunate that there's not like a statewide technical resource for this because everyone's doing this at the same time. So why wouldn't there be?
Well, there is, it's Eagle.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying, that's their intent. Eagle's been the only one to do presentations, they've been the only ones involved, it's all been Eagle. There is a funding mechanism attached to it. Eagle is giving counties 60,000 in funding overall
50
to
cents.
create the plan.
could we get a consultant for even $60,000?
Possibly. But none of them have ever written one, so.
There's also a 50%
new for
per
everyone.
capita.
It's new what?
There's also a 50% per capita per year, up to 300,000. So it would be, let me see if I have that here. All right, if Eaton County is around 110,000, so that would be an additional 55.
I mean, I'm going to disagree with what's been said so far. I think that if townships are in this, I feel like they would have more boots on the ground expertise to know what locally is needed. And I mean, it's one less thing that like we would have to be the experts of.
Townships can still be involved in it, but the county approval agency is who's going to approve the final plan and send it. So there's going to be a designated planning agency, and there will be, townships can be on that. But they don't have this, they'll write the plan, they'll have to send updates to the county approval agency as they're writing the plan.
Right.
And then the
Someone has to
county,
vote on it.
yes, basically, the last say to say, we approve this, or you can send it back to them to work, the designated planning agency. If there's anything in it you don't like, you can send it back to them to work on it again and then resubmit it. And it would be that agency that had the final say before it was sent to Eagle for approval.
So, I mean, if we weren't the voting agency and we left it to townships, I mean, would they just form some kind of consortia and say, we're the county agency, and they come up with some colorful acronym and like, that's the county agency? Like, if it's not us, then who?
The option goes to the county or to the townships,
Right.
but if they don't choose to do it, then it's gonna go to Eagle.
I just don't see a reason why we wouldn't be the voting agency. I just don't think we should necessarily be like the ones writing it. Like,
No, you don't have to be the ones writing it.
Right. And what we're voting on is the voting agent, or what we would vote on is to be the voting agency.
Yeah, what we have to decide right now, if we are going to be the agency that oversees the process and has the final say.
Today. She's
Correct.
just giving
Right,
you
right.
information today, she's not asking for any action.
Just seems like an easy decision to me, but maybe I'm just conflating it. I don't know.
Like,
I like that, but I think in the end, it needs to be more regionally oriented, and I think townships can't do that, whereas counties, we can get with Clinton County, we can get with Ingham. I mean, in the end, I think it needs to be a regional plan, and we live in a region, and we need to make sure that we include our neighbors because we're all in it together, especially in this type of operation. So I guess I would hope that in the future we create something that is regionally based.
Right, we're not Wayne or Oakland County where we can do things by ourselves.
Correct.
Oh, we could.
Okay. It appears to be working. Hamlin Township has their own recycling program through Granger. And, you know, I know that you could take some other townships not too far from Hamlin that maybe don't have the abilities to do that. If we had divided the county up in quarters or something, or encouraged the townships to work together, I think it's something that we should, you know, maybe even look into. Of course, we don't have the Michigan Township Association meetings anymore that they used to have where the townships, you know, were communicating with one another. But I think we could have some local recycling and have it be successful. I mean, because like if you've, down in Hamlin, there's Onondaga Township that probably needs some help, and there's Springport, and we kidder the township in Calhoun County. I mean, it's, I think it's something worth looking into.
Yes, I have, as I said, I have spoke to multiple counties, and some of them multiple times, but at this point, you know, that's not my call, and now it moves on to the county approval agency. So I know there has been some interest, and some concerns about whether it would be productive or not, but now you guys get to decide, figure that out.
Is there any other questions, comments? No?
Financial report is in there for the department as well.
Are there any questions about the financial report? Do we need to move to accept? Nope.
No.
Okay.
Okay, I did have one other,
Oh, you were almost free.
oh yeah, that was actually my first thing on here. So I do have a couple more things just to mention real quick. First quarter reporting forms for the SWAG program were sent out on December 15th, and they're due by January 31st. I have one back so far. I attended a meeting with EJUSA and Metro Recycling to continue working on transitioning their materials from the Ag Cluster program. The program used to utilize small bundles that you approved. EJUSA found that they weren't able to do it. So we're kind of back to the beginning. So I just wanted to let you know I'm still working on that. And so far, we have not found a solution for it yet. We've received multiple applications for the vacated Sunfield Recycling Center operator position with interviews scheduled, what was yesterday. So that went quite well, and hopefully we will have a new operator there soon. To date, we have received 4, of 9 solid waste ordinance licensing forms. These were all due on December 31st. We received none on time.
You want to say December 31st, 2024?
2023. And solid waste ordinance reporting forms are due January 15th. And to date, we've received 1 of 9. In the department, I would like to utilize the protocol that was started by Morgan Felposh last year and completed by me, where we move directly to January 16th, whoever is not in compliance gets a hearing letter. We did this last year. The year before that, we had people who were coming into the next solid waste ordinance reporting time and still hadn't complied. At last year, when we did this, everyone was in compliance. You know, one was only the day of the hearing that they complied, but it didn't drag on for 4 months by doing it this way. I have been trying to personally contact some of the haulers that we know have difficulties to try to let them know, but I thought it worked well last year, so I wanted to just, I guess, make sure that it's okay that I can do that again this year, which would mean that there would be a hearing for the next Public Works and Planning meeting for anyone who is not in compliance on January 16th.
When you say compliance, what you actually are talking about is paid their fee for their license.
Well, they have to send in their forms and,
Yep.
and pay their fees, yes.
And the form, there's two different things here. One of them, they give you the number that they've got from last year, how much they've taken in. And my question about that is January 15th is pretty quick. I mean, they're compiling their numbers, and you're saying, well, by January 15th, we need to have that number. And I would say that that's probably faster than what they can put it together. Now, in terms of paying their fee, I mean, they got a license that's due, they got to pay it, and that's a different issue.
That is the date that has been there for a long time before me, so it's just that I followed it. I think there is an argument to be made, though, that they do this every year, and these monies should be well documented and accounted for within their accounting systems. And I would think on January 1st, they could run a program that, if they're doing it correctly and they have their money in an escrow account, that they could actually easily meet the deadline.
Right, it's the monies they've collected over the entire year.
Right,
That's due, that's due on January the 15th.
right. They're expected to have the proper record keeping for it. They're expected to have the monies available for it, and they know it's coming. Now, if the board wanted to change that date, I would be more than happy to. It would have to be next year because or next, the second period for the SWORs, because the notices have already been sent out for this year. But that could, certainly something that we could do is change that date. I just followed the protocol of the past years.
Okay.
And with that, I am done. Oh, okay.
I mean, I'll just say non-compliance is non-compliance, and if there's a reporting requirement, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with if you're past due, send out that hearing letter. I mean, it's the letter of the law that's current, so, I mean, we can always change it next year, but, I mean, say that a organization has a complete turnover of staff, and they have no idea that this date's coming up, like, when's the earliest that they find out that this date is coming up? Like, as of this, they'll find out about, next year's dates this summer, or when do they find out about these dates?
It's always the same dates every year unless, the date falls on a weekend. So let's see, the solid waste ordinance reporting is sent out on December 15th. And, they can't complete it until after December 31st to be completely accurate. And November 30th was the solid waste ordinance licensing that was sent out. And, it's definitely been in my time here, every year, less and less people send them in time, more and more people we have to, Morgan and I in the past have spent so much of our time calling and chasing these people around trying to get these monies. They have, until last year with the LeBron incident, there has been no consequences for them. So if they could get away with not paying it for 4 months, they did it. But, those are public funds. People paid those money in. That's not their money. And I think we should be a little firmer with them with sending those monies into us. We're not asking for something out of their pocket. We're asking for something that they're supposed to be collecting all year long.
I suspect, I could be wrong, but I suspect that every one of these companies is computerized. I mean, that's the way of the world these days. And so it's not like they're going through by hand invoices for the last 12 months and determining what the amount is or what the various, even in terms of what is being, they've collected in terms of numbers for the waste. I suspect, as I think Blake mentioned, they will run a program, and it's going to come up with X. And the fact is, they're hanging on to the money, and
Well, and
I don't have any problem with sending a letter out that says you're coming to a hearing to explain why in God's green earth you can't do what you know you're supposed to do every year for the last 30 years.
There is also a paragraph in the letter that I send for both of them that says, if you can't make this deadline, please contact the county so that we can make alternate arrangements. I have personally sat down with the hauler in my office and helped them fill out a form. So, we bend over backwards to try to help and try to keep these relationships positive. But then we have 5 haulers out there right now who are not licensed to operate in our county. And they're operating in our county.
Send a letter.
Well, as a business owner, this is just an example of where the business is supposed to collect the taxes for the governmental unit. And I do that all the time. I collect taxes and all my transactions. That's what this is. And I'm just looking at the time. I got my December bill. Basically, I'm billing my clients, right? And I'm supposed to pay for my clients on January the 15th when their bill probably hasn't even gotten out to them or has just gotten out to them. I just throw out some of the finer points of collecting monies for a governmental unit.
They wouldn't be paying for any bills that weren't paid, though. As of December 31st, whatever has been paid within that quarter, if they have someone who hasn't paid their bill for 4 months, that's not going to be really in there. That would hopefully end up in the next one if the customer paid. That deadline of December 31st is what monies they've taken in between that 6 months period that ends December 31st is what they need to report and send to us. But again, I would be, if you would like us to change that date, I'd be more than happy to do that for the next reporting period.
No.
No.
Well, I guess if they can't pay it on time now, are you sure they're going to pay it on time if we change?
Well, as she said, it's already money they've collected. It's not coming out of their own pocket. They're not fronting their customers this amount of money. So it should be set aside in an escrow account. It should already be sitting there. This shouldn't be a real hard, difficult situation. I suspect some of them aren't doing that, and so they're trying to figure out what they owe at the end. But from a legal standpoint, it's not their money. It shouldn't go into their accounts. It should go into an escrow account. And when it becomes due, they write the check or whatever, or they transfer the funds to us. It shouldn't be something that takes even 15 days, for crying out loud.
I agree.
I knew if we worked together long enough, Barb, there'd be something we'd agree on.
You got me.
I don't know what kind of levers we have, but for those that are in non-compliance, can we require just a simple, what's challenging about this? Because if there really is a reporting, timing issue, then we want that time in order to really process on their side what makes a business sense. And if we're not thinking in terms of their business sense, we need to know that. There's nothing we can dangle to make them answer that question, but if there really are challenges with meeting this deadline, we should know, but it's just how do we make them answer that question?
I know in my time here, I've really worked to try to develop relationships with some of the haulers, and I think they have improved quite a bit at this point. When I first came in, they were quite contentious. There was this kind of you against me, and I know Morgan really wanted to see that change. So her and I both tried. In the beginning, they wouldn't even return our phone calls. So it was really hard, but we do have better relationships. Like I said, we've bent over backwards to help some that are struggling. And we do that every single reporting period. And I now have representatives from Waste Management and Republic who email me. So they could send me, questions. I have a much better relationship with them now. But I think also historically, there's been no consequence for sending it when you felt like it. So if they know there's never been a consequence, and I'm not insinuating that I think there needs to be some strong consequence, just stating the fact that if they know there's no consequence, then they're in no hurry. Perhaps that'll be something that we'll address in the MMP. Perhaps not, but that's just where we are right now. So I do think that the hearing, the 1-month hearing last year was helpful. And I think it saves us money in the long run because I'm sending out registered letters. Everything I send has to go registered. That's $9 per letter. I'm calling and calling and calling, leaving messages all over the place. It takes up quite a bit of staff time to constantly reaching out to these companies that are in non-compliance.
Right, like we as a county are actually paying for your time to make them pay money.
Oh, some of the smaller haulers, we likely spend more money in certified mailings and employee time than they actually pay in solid waste ordinance fees.
Cool.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Parks, you're up.
Morning, everyone. So first thing I want to go over is the community grant projects. We've been getting a few reimbursement requests from entities that did receive grant dollars through the community grant program. I did attach some pictures. Now, keep in mind, these are kind of the more simpler projects out of the grant requests, but still very important for the community themselves. The library, really nice outdoor patio area, some picnic tables, seating area, receptacle, trash receptacle. So that's one of the projects. The other one you'll see is the Olivet pedestrian fencing. This was actually really important. It connects a couple properties, park properties, going over the creek there. And from what I understand, that had been closed, I believe, for a little bit of time. So it was really nice to be able to provide that. The Hamlin Township, I didn't get any pictures of that, just because when I went to do the site visit, they have a lot of their stuff, it's ordered and it's ready to go. But obviously installation won't take place until the weather changes a little bit. So most likely this spring. They did have their concrete pathway completed and a ADA porta-john as well that just sits off to the side of the parking lot. But once they get the playground installed, the grills installed, and the picnic tables out, I'll do another site visit there and have pictures of that project as well. Another thing that's been brought to my attention is the request for a pathway. Now, this was brought to my attention by some Berry County representatives. And this pathway would be in Eaton County. It's right on the county line between Eaton County and Berry County. So Berry County is in the process of completing a trail that would end at Curtis Road, and I believe it's Nashville Highway. They're asking if we could look into possibly connecting from the end of that trail over to the high school there. Now, this is kind of odd for parks because we technically don't have any park property there. But from everything I've gathered, it does sound like this route is used quite a bit by kids for the schools. Honestly, if we had another department that this would fall under, I would be for it. And I am offering to look into this a little bit more if this board would like me to.
Blake?
I'm aware of this one, and the request they first gave us is that they would do the Berry County would do the engineering for this little section. There's a picture of it here. It's really just a little piece that goes across the road, Curtis Road. Mm-hmm. And then how far is it when it gets across the road to connect to our already existing trail, which is right in front of the school?
Correct. I would say it's a little bit over a mile.
This No, but the part that, in this engineering picture, this one, how far have they engineered this, what's this little piece there?
This was from Catherine.
Oh,
Thank you.
oh, okay.
There's the aerial if you needed it.
Yes, thank you very much.
So that's the part we're talking about, really.
Okay, so what I've been asked to do is to look into more than this.
Okay.
Yes, yes. So these are two different, I think, things that were brought to our.
The part that I was aware of is what this is, and bottom line, their path ends at the road.
Yes.
County line, and
Yep.
what they're asking for is that we put the crosswalk in, that's what this picture is,
Okay,
and then start the process to connect the trail that's at the high school.
yes.
And that's a pretty cool trail, and it's,
Yes, yeah. And again, the biggest thing here, I think, the most important thing is, it does seem to be used quite a bit for kids. And it would connect, eventually, it would give a connection to our trail as well. So I'm definitely not against it, but before I move forward, I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this.
so it's steps, basically. You know,
Right.
We don't want to do the whole part at one time.
Right.
But in my opinion, this is kind of what this millage is about. Now, I don't know who would be the requesting it, whether it would be probably the township. I mean, if someone has to request this funding, and so this little part here, this crosswalk, essentially, has to be requested in the grant program, and I guess it would be the township that would request it, and they would want to be on board, but I assume they probably are.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't think they would qualify for the grant program because one section of the property is actually owned by Eaton County, and then the next section is owned by an individual, I believe his name is Michael Hopkins. Now, from just having conversations, it does sound like there's already a easement there that he has allowed. I haven't confirmed that, but from the email that I got from one of the Trail Association members, it sounds like there might be a 30-year easement already in place. But again, I haven't confirmed that. But I do want to make sure that everybody is aware that I do not think they would qualify for any grant dollars through the community grant program.
Somebody's got to pay for it. If we're going to do it, I mean.
Yep.
Jim, what do you think? What do you know? You know
Well,
it.
if an individual owns it and it's easement, then that really throws a wrench in this thing. So are you saying, is there a mile stretch that has to be developed to connect to the trail? Am I understanding that right? Once you cross the road?
Travis, I talked to Catherine Getty yesterday, so maybe to clarify a little bit, it's my understanding from talking to Catherine, they want us to pave Paul Henry Trail. And then they want us to come with a connector that from behind the school, that's why the aerial's in the packet. They want us to do some type of a connector from the trail to the back of the school. That's my understanding from talking to Catherine Getty yesterday. But if it's a Safe Routes to Schools program, I would suggest talking to Maple Valley or whatever school district that is, because I think it's Berry County School District.
Yes.
About somebody applying for a Safe Routes to School program to do that.
Well, you mentioned a trail association, so I don't know why a trail association couldn't request funds under the ordinance.
Yeah, I don't know. So this meeting took place quite quickly. I think we met last Wednesday, so I don't have a lot of information. I've only met with them once on this particular topic. But yes, it sounds like there are possible alternatives to getting that developed. Safe route to schools. The Trail Association, I think the reason they approached me is because they're just in the process of finishing up the one trail that will end on Curtis Road and Nashville Highway. So they already have that, engineer drawings for that. They already have the funding. I believe they're going out to bid or waiting for the bids to come back for that.
As far as the easement goes too, there definitely is a recorded easement on that Hopkins property. There's two parcels. The aerial's up on the screen. The property with the house on it behind the trail is part of that easement, as well as a little triangle to the left of that. And those are both part of a 30-year lease agreement that's been recorded and register of deeds with the Hopkins.
So in your estimation, how many parties have got to be involved to make this happen? I mean, us included, but, so,
It just depends on what route we do go for funding. If they are eligible for safe school route funding, then that would obviously involve the school system. And then it would most likely involve us because there is a section of property there that Eaton County does own, so we would have to give permission for that as well. So probably 2 to 3 parties, I would say, involved in this.
Well, the millage clearly states that use for trails is one of the mandated or allowable uses for that millage money. It seems to me that this falls right in that wheelhouse, and all that Travis is talking about at this point is just a consensus that we'd like him to look into this as an option, and I strongly agree that it is an option, and I think we should look at it, and let's proceed on. That's my sense.
No, I agree.
Excellent.
Do we need a motion or anything on this discussion? No. Okay.
Just a couple other things. I'm currently working on the budget, trying to get ahead of that before it's due here in the next couple months. And I do want to notify everybody that we did not receive the DNR Trust Fund grant award, and that was for the fishing pier at Crandall Park. I don't think this is any big surprise. This is the 3rd time we've gone for this particular grant. And it's just, we have a couple factors that go against us as far as scoring. But also, I just don't think this is a project that the state of Michigan they typically fund through this grant program. So I can go forward again. This has opened up, the trust fund grant has opened up again. I believe it closes April 1st this year. I can pursue this again, but I think at this time it's not worth the time, but yes.
Discussed talking with the consultants potentially about some assistance on the grant.
Yeah, that's really all I have right now, unless anybody has any questions.
What are your thoughts about we got turned down for the Spark grant? Fishing pier, we beat that one up and it's not gonna happen. But the parking lot and the expansion that was over at the park, is that, do we have, our long-term plan obviously is to go through and do that. What steps do we take currently to achieve the long-term goal? Is there anything?
At Crandall Park, you're talking about?
Correct.
Yes, so I think once the strategic plan is finalized and comes back, that's when we'll really start to move forward on that. But, as far as funding, we're very close to being able to achieve that, depending on what pricing comes back, whether we have to do it in 1 or 2 phases. But yeah, once the strategic plans is finalized, I think we'll be able to get rolling on it pretty quickly.
Okay. Yeah, you mean the master plan?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Any other?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The financial report is also in your packet.
Any questions on that? Is that just for our information?
Just for information, yes.
So then we can move on to intercounty drains.
Good morning.
Feel like you've been an hour in and we send you almost like a Christmas catalog size PowerPoint to go through.
This is the best presentation of the day.
Good morning. So I'll start off just with an introduction. My name's Chris Mattson. I'm an engineer with Spicer Group, and I'm the project manager for the Intercounty Drainage Board on this project.
I'm Stacy Hassang. I'm an attorney at Fahey Schultz Bursick Roads. We're the attorneys for the Drainage District, and I've been serving as counsel for the drain office my entire, I think, 27-year career in some form or fashion. So it's wonderful that I don't have to see you that often. That means we're doing okay.
All right, so just to preface our presentation today, we're going to be getting into some updates on the project to talk about the history, some of the different points on our design and our status, the schedule, some properties that we're acquiring for the project, different coordination items, cost assessing. We wanted to also provide an opportunity for as much feedback as we can get on the project and the approach and any questions or concerns from the committee.
So I know Commissioner Wagner kind of gave you a warning shot over the bow that this is going to be a big project. He wasn't kidding. This is going to be the biggest project you've seen in terms of a drain project. And so it's significant costs to that. When I say significant, lots. So we want to unpack this as much as you want to hear about it today. This won't be the last time we're here, but you need to understand it because it's going to be significant. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I must have missed them. Where is this drain?
So where is the drain? We're going to go through that it's right on the edge of Delta Township. And so we'll go through that in probably more specificity than you'd like. You're going to know all about this by the time we're done today. And so next slide. Oh, yes, sir.
Well, and I want to preface it by saying that it's a gigantic project, and the previous big project, which was the Courier Creek, was very remarked on in Delta Township. That was probably the last big project that was done, and you'll remember it.
Yep.
And there was a lot of issues, there was a lot of
remember
public problems, and it ended up being a pretty good project now that we look back at it. But
Yep.
there was a lot of pushback during the time, and this one is 5 times as big.
Yeah, so this one is going to be bigger. I'm going to say not 5 times as big. That was like a $40 million project. This is going to be 50 to 60, but we sure learned a lot from the Carrier Creek project. So before we get into this, I told Chris he's giving the presentation. I'm going to talk when I want, all the time that I want. So this is just how I roll, sorry. So we learned a lot. This is not a Cadillac. This is putting pipe in the ground. There's going to be some things that we're going to do that we've learned that are going to be aesthetically nice, but are absolutely necessary for the drainage to save the cost of big pipe. Big pipe where there's no room is really expensive. But what we learned is the first thing we did was went and saw Delta Township. We met with Gordy Van Wieren, who's been their attorney for a very long time, went through the whole Carrier Creek. And we are going lockstep with them through this process. Many meetings with the property owners that are impacted, being very transparent about the cost. We're going to talk about a couple property owners that have assessments that are going to be knock their socks off big. We're going to meet with them individually now, even though we're talking 6 months from now that this is going to come down, because we don't want this to be a surprise to anybody. But like I said, that was remarked on a lot. This is, I'm going to call it, this is not a flashy project by any stretch of the imagination.
And I only bring that up as a cautionary,
Oh, yeah.
because I've been on this board, and I've lived through that, and I heard about it, and I was there when that was all happening. And, I don't want to go through that again.
Neither do I. I was there from the very beginning to the very end at the Board of Determination. And so lessons learned, very great project. I mean, you haven't heard problems about that. And so what I think the problems were is in terms of communication with the stakeholders. And we are very intentional on addressing those concerns. And so if you called up Delta Township today, they'll say we're completely updated on what's going on.
All right, so if we can go forward to the next slide here.
See, I do it to them.
I just want to sort of lay out the framework for this. As an intercounty drain, it's governed by an intercounty drainage board, which comprises the Michigan Department of Ag, Eaton County Drain Commissioner, and Ingham County Drain Commissioner. Now, those who sit on the board are Brady Harrington as chair from MDARD. Robert Rose is the Ionia County Drain Commissioner as the special commissioner for Eaton County. There is property owned in the district by Mr. Wagner, so he is sitting in as special commissioner to make decisions on behalf of Eaton County. And Paul Pratt as deputy drain commissioner to Patrick Lindeman for Ingham County. So next slide. History on the project: the drain was established in the late 1800s as an agricultural drain, open channel. It was improved several times until most notably in 1939 and 1949 it was enclosed and actually in the current state that it's in today. So the outlet portion of the drain from Saginaw Highway north to its outlet into the Grand River is that portion of the drain over 70 years old. And we'll get into more about specifically that portion of the drain. There were some extensions for the drainage system in the 70s and 80s. One of the things that we've done a lot of education on and just keeping people up to speed on is the separation between the Briggs and the bank. For a long time, Bank Briggs was sort of the buzzword to describe this system. Some of the procedural hearings that we've had early on in this project separated those two systems formally. The Briggs drain is a county drain that services Eaton County lands only. It runs along M43 and then south into some of the neighborhoods. And the Bank Intercounty is the main outlet that takes water from Ingham and Eaton County. So it acts as the main outlet here.
Now, we recognize there needs to be work on the Briggs, but if the bank is the outlet, and you have to have a good outlet before you can do anything else on that. So this is a necessary first step.
So our next slide here, I'm just going to explain the drain and the drainage district a little more. So the drain outlets into the Grand River at along Waverly Road. So this would be north of Willow Highway, which you can see at the top of the image there. As we head down the image to the south, the drain crosses Willow Highway. It cuts through neighborhoods along Thomas L. Parkway, in between Thomas L. Parkway and Clark to the south, crosses M43, and then heads down Thomas L. Parkway in Dibble, crossing Michigan Avenue and St. Joseph Highway before ending in the neighborhood to the west of Home Depot there, just north of the interstate. So the drain itself is about 6 miles long. The split between lands between the drain in Eaton County and Ingham County is 99.7% of this is in Eaton County. There's actually a small red rectangle there in the image right near the intersection of St. Joe and Waverly. There's a very small amount of pipe, as you can see here in the figure, in Ingham County. So our next slide here shows the division between counties for the drainage district, a parcel count and an acreage count there. Again, the district, when we're looking at the land and the parcels owned, is still in the 90% Eaton County category.
So a drainage district is synonymous with the watershed. So if a drop of water falls on a piece of property and eventually gets to this drain, then it's in the drainage district. And that's synonymous with the special assessment district. So these are the properties that are going to be liable for a special assessment for this project.
All right, moving on to the next slide here. So our initial efforts into this project was a study and an updating of a report to understand the current capacities and to look at feasible alternatives to approach some of the concerns with the system's capacity. One of the things that we present in all of our coordination meetings with stakeholders is that the current system is unable to handle that one-year storm. So that is, we talk about one-year storm, 100-year storm. That's just the statistical opportunity for that amount of rain to fall in a certain period of time. So it is not necessarily a storm that happens once a year, but it statistically is how that is sort of defined. So a 100-year storm doesn't happen once every 100 years. It can happen as often as it would happen, and we've been seeing storms be more intense, more so recently. The current system would need to be 4 times the capacity to handle that one-year storm, and you can see there 8 times the capacity to handle a 10-year storm, which is a typical design standard for storm sewer systems.
Now, just to give you an idea, I mean, the point of this slide is this is massively undersized because this is old pipe. Can you imagine what that area looked like 70 years ago in terms of rooftops, parking lot, roadways, driveways, and what we have now? And I was sharing before, I worked for about 60 different county drain offices. I I rarely see them this small compared to, like, you rarely see a drain that can't handle a one-year storm. This is an issue.
And just to give some context, the 1949, they installed a parallel pipe from Saginaw Highway to the outlet and into the Grand River. And at the time, the Thomas L. Parkway neighborhood was just being laid out with roads. In the aerial imagery, you can see the Bretton Woods subdivisions were laid out. There was very few homes built in there, and some residential development south of 43. Saginaw Highway had no buildup of commercial properties as of that time. So then they added a second pipe as a metric to, or as a way to get some more capacity there, and found that pretty quickly it became not enough to handle.
It's just not all of a sudden oversized in 2024 or undersized in 2024. This has been a long-standing issue.
So next slide here, there was a study in the 70s which resulted in they called it a watershed or a stormwater management plan, which was a proposed design in 1986, which is shown here, the cover of that report. They felt that at the time, the system was severely undersized. They had outlined a very extensive project across the district. So as we outlined at the beginning, we're talking about the outlet. We're essentially on the east side of the district, right along Waverly, this corridor that this drain exists. This project had proposed work throughout the district, constructing new pipes, relaying out how things were connected and where they connected back into larger parts of the system. It was a very extensive project. Those improvements were turned down for cost in 1988, I believe, a couple years after this report was published. At the time, 9 to 13 million was the figure for two different alternatives of that design, which ranges about 26 to 36 million today for that project back then. So just to give a feel for a lot of the focus of our capacity is the outlet, and I'm speaking specifically from Saginaw Highway to the Grand River. There's 5,000 feet of pipe, and that pipe is comprised of a 30-inch and a 48-inch pipe installed about 15 feet apart, side by side, running from Saginaw Highway down to the river. Approximately the size of what we would need just for conveying the relative size here is what we've shown here on this slide. Approximately an 8-foot diameter pipe to convey that water downstream. Now, Stacy had alluded to some things that we're doing in the design to reduce the pipe size. This is the reduced pipe size.
Yeah, this is,
One of the things that we can do to decrease pipe size is have places around the district for the water to settle and hold until there's capacity in the system for it to get to the outlet. So regional detention has become a major part of the project, and we'll get into specifically where we're hoping to make those things happen. The pipe wouldn't really resemble a pipe. We were thinking concrete box culvert for 5,000 feet installed 4 feet at a time to make that work, pure conveyance, just to move the water without any detention. We've made up a lot of ground since the start of the project to get properties for detention, and realizing the savings is now part of the project as we've obtained some of these properties. So we'll get into those properties here.
yeah, so when this was petitioned and we had 2 different hearings about it, we were very transparent about costs. Like the numbers we're going to talk to you about today, those were provided to property owners when we had these hearings. And the high dollar amount was big pipe, no detention.
Correct.
And then we're getting that narrowed down because the bigger the pipe, it's more expensive than smaller pipe. But you have to remember, this is going under a road. And this committee dealing with Public Works understands we're not alone underneath the road. Every other utility you can imagine is trying to get underneath that road too. And so Tricky doesn't even begin to explain, how difficult this is going to be able to massage. So the smaller we can get that pipe size, it's cheaper and easier to deal with the utility conflicts that we're going to see trying to do this.
Correct. So the project goals, as I mentioned, a 10-year design would be what we're shooting for. This is a very industry common industry level of service that these storm sewer systems are designed to. That's going to include upsizing pipes, regional detention, and roadside infiltration, which is basically taking in smaller pockets, having that water infiltrate into areas where it makes sense to basically slow it down from the point where it hits the ground until it gets into that pipe. So if we can, reduce the flashiness of the system and get the water into that main drain slower, we're gonna have a smaller project that a smaller project to build. So next slide here, project schedule. Petition was received for these improvements November of 2021. There was a practicability hearing in April of 22. And that was held at Waverly High School. The necessity hearing on the project was held in March of 2023. Engineering design and property acquisition started in May of 23. And as Stacy mentioned, since that time, we've been having regular meetings with Delta Township. So through the end of 2024, we're looking to complete engineering design, permitting, utility coordination. There's a handful of easements that we're looking to acquire as well. Looking to bid the project late this year to start construction next year is our plan overall for the project. So some of the things that would impact that timeline, going here to the next slide, as Stacy mentioned, the utility conflicts. This part of the district is completely built out. Finding, as we'll get into it, finding almost 30 acres of green space, you would have never thought possible, aside from how things played out here in our property acquisition in an area that is completely built out. So those property acquisitions could impact the timeline. Our permitting with Eagle, any sort of encroachments to the existing drain route as we go to replace certain sections of the drain, and then fitting a large pipe in the ground and being able to have the cover to construct it. So design status here, work completed to date. We've gone through all of our survey efforts, utility information, starting coordination with different utility owners, all of our modeling for hydraulics throughout the system. Road agency coordinations has also been a big part there. And we'll be currently working to finalize the hydraulics and the design of the sizing of the storage. Utility coordination won't end until the project's in the ground, essentially. That will be ongoing throughout construction. And then the low impact design is these roadside infiltration areas that I had mentioned. So I want to get into some of the property acquisitions. To date, there were 3 properties acquired for regional stormwater, 4300 West Saginaw, 314 Dibble, 219 North Waverly as one package, and 511 North Waverly as the third stormwater storage property. There was a drain construction, a conflict with the construction of the drain in the future, and there was another property purchased to alleviate that conflict.
What he means is the pipe was under somebody's house.
Correct.
And they didn't know it. And there's no way we can get to it without taking that house.
Yeah, so they put the house up for sale, and we approached them to purchase the house.
So part of the problem, and you don't hear about it very often, but I know the commissioner deals with this all the time, drain easements that were obtained before 1956 are legally valid if they're in the office of the drain commissioner. They don't have to be recorded at the Register of Deeds. And across the state, most of them aren't. And if you read a title packet, that's an exception to the title work, is they don't check the drain office, the title company doesn't. And so people will buy houses not knowing that there's a drain easement on their property. And that's exactly the case that we have today. People didn't know, and it's not an issue until it's an issue. And so we have a valid easement there, but we're not going to say, hey, we have an easement to take your house out. Sorry, we purchased the entire property instead.
So looking at the different regional stormwater sites across the drainage district, in the figure that's on the screen, north is to the left. Just to keep everybody on their toes here, I've rotated the map sideways. You can see the 3 properties, so the larger one being 4300 West Saginaw. We'll go through each property here one by one. So the next slide here, 4300 West Saginaw Highway. This is the former Catholic high school and bank property. This was purchased just before the pandemic to become a call center. That business decision quickly fell through to make that a call center. And that sat vacant for several years, and the Drainage District bought that property. This property is 24 acres in total. About 20 acres of that will be used for detention for the drain.
And I'm really proud of the, kind of the teamwork between Delta Township and the Drainage Board on this property. This was a hard property to sell because you have a restriction in how much sanitary you can provide. And so they had potential people interested in it to put development, but the sanitary isn't available. And so what do you do with a piece of property like that? And it just worked out fantastic that it was available right where we needed it.
Yep, yeah, and this will detain a significant portion of the drainage district. Having the property and also having it in the right location around the district is the two parts that, when those come together, it makes it very useful. So this, we'll get into this property a little bit further. So next slide, 319 Dibble, 214 Waverly. This is just north of the Waverly, Michigan intersection. So this is across the street from the former Waverly Hills Golf Course. It's about 2.7 acres total. And the inter-county drain is there on Dibble on the left side of the image there. Next property, 511 North Waverly. This is just south of Saginaw Highway on the west side of Waverly, again, across from that former golf course. This is just south of the plazas and the commercial development there at the corner of Saginaw and Waverly.
And we just entered into the purchase agreement this week.
Yep, so that's about 2.5 acres total there. So I wanted to jump in to more detail on 4300 West Saginaw. As I mentioned, the former O'Rafferty High School and LaSalle Bank. It was operated by IDE in different suites, leasable suites inside the building after the bank had used it. We're planning a demolition of the building in 2025 at the beginning of the project. Another thing that we've been coordinating pretty heavily with Delta Township on is splitting and selling off the frontage for development, redevelopment. So that is something that, if they wanted to coordinate a buyer or a certain use specific that makes the most sense for the township, and they've got a corridor improvement authority through there, that is something that we've been coordinating with them on. And that, I put it right in here that detention in that site will save the project $10 million just in pipe size because of the ability for us to detain and hold the water there to let the system catch up. So that frontage there is about the front 4 acres of that parcel that we would look to coordinate with Delta on a resale of.
Yeah, and I know, Chris, and maybe you're talking about in this future, we've also been talking to Delta Township's Planning Department, Parks Department about, this doesn't have to be, when you think of detention, I think everybody thinks of a pond with fence around it. There's lots of different types of detention basins. They don't have to look ugly as all get out. They can be multi-purposed for park, for make it a natural feature of the area. And so we are going to work with Delta Township early in the planning and design process to see what makes sense for this property.
Oh, yes.
So, my property backs up to this one. I'll ask questions about this when we're ready, but if we could, there's one of those that's right next to an apartment complex.
Yep.
My mic isn't on. Yeah, so the one that I want to ask about,
The McCool brothers.
Yep, there's a shopping center and an apartment complex. With that being so close, like literally apartment complex, property, has there been any decisions made about any potential like safety challenges with an apartment complex with children, and then there's a pond? It's probably not going to be full of water all the time, but fronting up to someone's like living abode, it just potentially is a challenge.
Absolutely. So the apartment complex owned the property. We bought it from them, and or we have a purchase agreement with them.
Correct.
And I know that Chris met with them. they were very interested in that exact issue, Commissioner, and so I know that we've spent a lot of times with renderings and conversations about what that would look like for them.
Yeah, how it's going to operate, how long it'll hold water. Are there going to be little pockets of standing water and mosquito issues? You know, is there going to be any need or encroachment or nuisance to the neighboring properties just because it's there? So we've had a lot of those conversations, and making it safe, having a stormwater utility is going to have to go hand in hand, and it will be part of the design to make sure that, you know, that one being the closest to, I guess, both the properties on Waverly are closer to residential areas. Is going to be a big thing with those, that they fill up with stormwater when they're needed, and then they drain out within a timely amount of time.
Yeah, it's great to hear that that apartment complex is engaged, though, because it's literally someone's view off their balcony is going to be that very property. So
Yep.
the mosquito issue is one, too, where someone's sitting out or someone visiting. There's a new restaurant that just opened right there. I mean, walking into that restaurant, you'd hate to be bitten by these big mosquitoes that are just hanging out in that little drainage pond, but, so, good to hear that the
Yeah, I
businesses
think
are engaged.
The intent is it to be a dry basin and
Correct.
only used to slow that water down in significant storm events is the goal.
So
Yeah,
most of the time, it would just be a dry bed.
Yeah.
yeah, it won't have a permanent water level in it. There won't be any fountains or anything like that. You know, when it fills up, there'll be water, and then after that storm, it'll dry right back out.
Okay, cool.
All right, so the 4,300 property, this is just to give you sort of a sense for what that redevelopment area looks like and what of the remaining part of the property will have that grading performed to be able to provide stormwater detention. So the, as Stacy mentioned, you know, and I only think about, you know, these older sort of stormwater detention ponds. I think about some of the ponds around the county that are fenced in. Specifically, I think it's Nixon and St. Joe there on the Myers and Henderson. You know, that's not the look and feel that we're going for this property. This is, again, it's going to be utilized during storm events and then drain back out after. There may be a low flow channel through the center of the property as the water can get through, but it's not going to be just a fill up and sit full of water. It'll be a maintainable portion of the drain. You know, and it is a big area, and it backs up to St. Gerard, and it's going to be something that's not going to be an eyesore at the end of the project.
And we are in the midst of scheduling a meeting with St. Gerard to talk about the design and assessments, which we'll talk about in a little bit here.
So utility and road coordination, as part of meetings with the township, the manager's office, finance, and planning, is also with their engineering and utility departments to make sure that all of our utility conflicts are coordinated. Water and sewer throughout the length of this project is going to be a major hurdle to get over, coordinating the construction. Second in line is Consumers Energy with gas, you know, just as much pipe in the ground as the water system out there. So that is going to be our next thing that we need to make sure is well coordinated. We've had many meetings with consumers, and we're working specifically on which areas where we're constructing and crossing their mains do we need to talk about elevations and how we're going to get the project built. Board of Water and Light has mostly overhead electric. They do have a large transmission water main running down Michigan Avenue to serve Delta Township that we need to be cognizant of. And then the total myriad of communication data companies that have different fiber and phone utilities throughout the district. MDOT is being coordinated for any impacts to the M43 right-of-way as we come across and replace sections of the drain or add service in different areas along M43. And Eaton County Road Commission is every other road in the district. So primarily south of M43, the drain is built along the roadways. For the most part, north of M43, it is a cross-country sort of venture, and it's going from street to street and backyards through the low ground as it was originally established as an agricultural drain. So a little bit different nature when we're talking north of M43 versus south. But any sort of crossing or repaving, talking standards on primary and secondary county roads is already had a few meetings with the County Road Commission on that. All right, moving next into our preliminary cost estimate. In March of 2023, this was at the I think the practicability hearing, the necessity hearing specifically. We were looking at a range from 40 to 72 million for the project. This was early on. This was following the study and report prior to engineering. Currently, as we've gotten in and refined cost estimates and gotten more information and input on the project, we're looking at a range of about 50 to 60 million for the project. And as we go further, we're going to refine the estimate further, but this is sort of the current state of what we think the estimated cost. This is not construction. This would be all-in project cost, end of the day.
Property acquisition, engineering, legal, which is much less than the engineering, stuff like that. I do this to him all the time.
Yeah. So this, we try to estimate all the potential costs for the project. All right, looking next to the assessment roll here. So at the highest level, the Intercounty Drainage Board will make a decision on an apportionment between counties. Eaton County will assess their landowners separately than Ingham County will be assessing those landowners in their district. And that split between counties has not been set yet. There are historical splits between counties for maintenance and just general operation of the drain before this project. It will likely look like a 95-5 split between Eaton and Ingham counties.
Or a 97.3, somewhere around there.
Right. So the drilling down a level, the portion of the project in sort of the structure of Eaton County's assessment role will be a portion to the county for benefits to county roads, and there will be a portion then that can be passed on to the road commission, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on that. Portion to Delta Township for benefits to public health, portion to MDOT for benefits to state highways, and then the remainder, a portion to property owners, landowners in the district for benefits derived from the project. The financing that we're looking at for this project will be up to 30 years.
So I want to talk about that for a minute. So normal drain project, the maximum you can do is 20 years, but due to a pipe size, there's a section of the drain code that lets you go 30. We've been working from the very beginning with Bedzinski and Company and your bond counsel Dickinson Wright, like what's the best way to handle this? We looked at rural development, we looked at some loans through the state, and they both feel that a basic bond sale for 30 years is going to be the best case scenario for this. In some of those situations, like with grants, you spend more trying to get a grant than you actually get out of it. And so going through the numbers with them and what they anticipate as interest rates, they think this is the best solution.
So looking at like a $60 million total, that'd be 57 to Eaton County at 95%. So getting more into the weeds here on the Eaton County portion, the calculations that we perform to determine benefit for road agencies is a calculation that we call 14A. And this calculation at this point has yielded 17%, which is essentially the runoff generated within the framework of the district and the different land uses in the district. 17%. Coming out of that calculation to the county based on road runoff. The road commission can receive 50% of that 14A calculation total. And then additional on top of that, any sort of supplemental benefit to the road commission, which is any parts of the project that are, constructed for the road commission for whatever purpose and whatever part.
So this is the slide I want to talk to you about the most. Everybody needs to get mentally prepared for. 17% is $9.7 million. That's an assessment to Eaton County. Half of that can be sent to the road commission. The other half is yours.
We have a $4 million bill.
Four plus, yep. Over 30 years, so however that goes. So that's why we're here today, is to make sure everybody, eyes wide open, understands that that's going to be the case. I mean, and that's a calc that we use. That's not the art of anything. This is what we think is fair. That's the number, based on that 14A calculation that we utilize. And so. Yep,
17% is 9.7. 4.85 would be, if you were to split that in half, which is $161,500 per year for that half portion,
Plus interest.
over 30
Yep.
years plus interest, yeah.
Now, obviously, you can prepay some of that, but that's what we're looking at.
So on bonding that,
Yeah,
which obviously we're going to have to do,
yep.
does the bond incorporate the road commission's portion and our commission? So we're going to do, so really we're talking about, even the road commission gets half of it, it's really county money. So we're going to
Yeah.
bond all of it as a one.
Well, that's your decision. So what we're going to do, and we've talked to Bobby Budzinski and Roger Swets about this at length. If you gulped really hard on yours, you should see what the township's is. It's bigger than this. We're talking to them about a 25% assessment to them that's all theirs. And so what we will do is, we'll get the project cost, and then we'll talk to MDOT, the county, road commission, the townships, and the property owners. Is there any of it, a portion or all of your assessment you'd like to prepay so we don't have to bond for it? And then after that's determined, then we'll decide what we actually bond and ask for the full faith and credit of the county for.
And that-
So I anticipate it will be lower than that because there'll be prepayments, and that's up to you.
So basically, what you're saying is when we get to the bonding portion, we're all going to chip in our parts to that, including the township probably will, they won't
Yep.
bond separately, it'll be part of the
No,
big
it'll all
package.
be one package, and then they'll say, their assessment is what? I think that's the next slide,
14.25,
million.
yeah, 25%.
That's what we have it at right now. None of this is set in stone. This is our, first flush at this, so to speak, pardon the pun. And so they'll decide, let's say, we want to put 5 million up front, then we'll only bond for the rest of it, and then they'll get the annual assessments for that. Same with property owners, same with the county. MDOT normally prepays, so we'll look at that.
Okay.
And I think financial advisors' crystal balls aren't working super great right now in terms of what anticipated interest rates are, but we're going we're using 6% as our draft number when we're running calcs.
So the average homeowner is gonna, the commercial, but the
Yep.
people are gonna be on the hook for $25 to $30 million.
Right, so
So-
looking at our next slide here after the township slide, looking at residential, and most of the properties are a quarter to 1 acre residential lots, is about 18,000 total.
Over
which-
30 years.
Which would be about $600 a year plus interest.
Well, I was gonna say, you have one slide with, I think there was like 1,900 parcels in Eaton County or something like that. So dividing up $25 to $30 million between 1,900 parcels.
Yeah,
a lot of
and the
money.
parcels, as you're aware, it's not going to be pro rata per parcel. Acreage is going to be, so we're going to look at two main factors. Is going to be acreage and then land use.
Yep.
And so we've ran a draft roll, and that's where we have this range for a regular, I'm in a quarter acre subdivision. This is about what it is. We're setting up a meeting with Representative Anthony to talk about potential line items in the budget for the legislature at the state level to try to assist this with us, but we can't plan on that.
So your assessment really isn't going to be based on taxable value. Your assessment's going to be based on square footage and how much asphalt or concrete is on the parcel, for example.
The intensity of the use of the drain.
Got it.
And so the two main factors are acreage and then what we call impervious surface. And we don't measure, well, we might do a little bit of measuring, but we don't normally measure like everybody's rooftop because that changes over a time period. But industrial pays more than commercial, commercial pays more than residential. Big residential per acre. Like if you have a 10-acre residential, that's going to pay less per acre than a quarter because that quarter residential has more
Right.
rooftop
More
percentage.
more asphalt.
Yeah,
Got it.
and then down from there.
Yep.
And that's how we do the assessments pretty much in Eaton County as a rule.
Yeah, exactly. So some other things just to note as we've gone through this initial assessment roll and looking at how things are getting spread out preliminarily. There's a lot of HOA and condo association common areas that take up large chunks of land, but at the township level, which is where when the county develops their assessments, they get transferred to the local unit to be assessed. Those HOA properties and condo common areas are not assessable land. So we're going through some exercises to figure out how to assess the benefit from those properties. Churches are liable for assessment under drain code projects. So that is something that we were having some initial conversations with the township about. St. Gerard is going to be the largest payer in the district from a church perspective. Aside from the church and school, they own several residential properties around the church itself. And some other larger residential properties are being looked at just to see, as we mentioned, having a lot of acreage, if it's all forested or sort of low ground area, is there an appropriate land use land cover being applied to that parcel? Just because it's larger in size, though it may not have a stormwater impact like our typical factors would show. So we are looking into some detail in some areas to, make it a very level playing field for all the properties.
Getting into the weeds a little more, but I want to, the bank drain, the Briggs drain that goes into the bank drain, are they going to be assessed also? Because
Great question.
So the assessment district is going to include Briggs.
Everybody in the Briggs, and
right.
right now, we're paying attention to that because in other drainage districts, if you're already in a different drainage district, we give you a little bit of a reduction.
Right.
Because you're gonna get hit for that. And those people in the Briggs, so it goes bank, then Briggs, then there's some more drains after that. Everything in the next 30 years is gonna probably need some work, so they could have several years from now, up to 3 assessments. And so we're very mindful of that.
Absolutely.
But they're still gonna get assessed.
Did you say in the beginning that the residents have already been contacted of how much they're going to be required to pay yet?
So they were sent, great question, so let's be crystal clear on this. They were sent notices to come to our meeting where this went over, and we had it on Zoom and in person, and you know how that goes, somebody gets a notice from the county, it goes in the recycling. We had not as good of a turnout as I would like to see. We're keeping Delta Township informed, and we're talking about costs at their meetings for people who attend, et cetera. But as far as what a cost to a regular property owner, we didn't have enough information to say this is about how much it's going to be, but we let them know this is the total cost, this is the total acreage, this is the total parcels. We're working the rest out.
Okay. I just know if you had got that far yet.
No, and so we are going to meet with Delta Township at their board meeting a little later this month and give a similar presentation to this. We're meeting with some of the big stakeholders like the church to talk about theirs, and then we're going to work with Delta Township as how they feel the best way to talk to their residents will be and communicate this. And again, you don't want to give somebody a number because then it's ingrained in their mind and we haven't taken bids yet. And anybody who's done construction, bids are crazy. And I don't know what 2024 is going to look like. So.
The size of this project, I mean, we traditionally have given the county's full faith and credit to these drains. Is there any particular consequences to the county of us giving full faith and credit to this project?
I don't believe there will be based on where we are debt-wise, but obviously we will evaluate that.
So we have
stay
an
tuned.
interim borrowing of
Information.
about 10 million
The interim borrowing, I don't think it's quite 10 million. I think it's closer to 5.
that this county board pledged its full faith and credit to, that we will pay that off with the proceeds of the big bond. And we anticipate your bond counsel and municipal advisor coming in to go through all the details. But we met with them before. We don't want to get into something that's not going to be tenable. To be honest, it's more Lansing Township that we're going to look at all these to make sure that it works for everybody. Great question. Yes.
So there's the communicating cost, but residents that I'm most concerned about is the ones that live in that northern section of Thomas L. Parkway, because they're going to have their backyards ripped up, they're going to have their streets ripped up. I feel like there needs to be someone knocking on doors. I don't know if that's from the township, but like I feel like it can't just be a letter of like, hey, we're gonna rip your backyard up, or hey, we're gonna tear up your street. And I mean, it's gonna be a major disruption for that neighborhood. So I don't know how you guys have done that in the past, but I mean, I really feel for residents in that particular little cul-de-sac.
Yeah, so at the bigger scale projects, something that we like to typically do is host a website with construction updates, with figures and maps showing when and where things are happening, having door-to-door or, door hangers go out, basically to inform sort of day of, construction activity. I feel there's going to be a lot of opportunity to have conversations on specific areas and how the construction is going to happen in different neighborhoods, because it's going to be, as we come through Clark Road from the detention property at 4300, crossing into the Thomas L. Parkway neighborhood, going down along Elizabeth there, there's going to be some major disruptions, and there will be a lot of communication about it.
Yeah, crossing down Clark, seeing how there's no other outlets on that particular street, for someone living on, that part of Clark where it's gonna jut down to the inlet there into the detention pond, are they just not gonna be able to use their street for a certain amount of time? Like,
It'll all be maintained, and a big part of that is emergency services will be maintained throughout the project. And that's a very common, hoop that our contractors have to jump through in how they approach and how they build the project, is having access for everyone. Relocating mailboxes, making sure, garbage collection still happens. Emergency services is a huge part of that too. And also informing the school district and emergency services when closures are happening. Because if we're going to close a road and we're routing traffic differently, it's not just the resident that we're trying to communicate with. It's anyone who's going to need to come down there, bus routes, the whole
Amazon.
nine yards. Well, I don't know who you call it Amazon. I'll let Jeff know.
but I mean, that's a good point, because like even with Amazon, like there are some elderly folks who rely on delivery service for their prescriptions, and if they're not getting a notice until day of, I mean, is day of really the standard of letting people know, or is there a little bit more notice?
No, it'll be ahead of time. There's going to be a lot of communication, a lot more than you would typically see on a drain project.
Right.
With this project.
And not just because, like I said, we've learned, lessons learned, but also there will be work by Delta Township. I mean, this is going to probably involve sanitary and water work too.
Impacts to
so.
sanitary and water. I mean, those having that information conveyed so that there can be proper planning if there's, disconnections of water service for a period of time, or there's a monster amount of coordination.
And if you'd like, we can start inviting you to some of those coordination meetings as it gets closer to construction time that we're having with Delta Township. Because I'm sure, it's funny, and I'm sure you get the same thing, when there's an issue with the drain office, they don't necessarily call the drain office. They call you, or they call the county, or the township, or they call their state legislator. So we want to make sure everyone knows what's going on. So we can definitely do that.
So can you maybe clear up maybe a misconception that I've heard is every single street in the drainage district going to be ripped up so that way you can reapply bigger sewage pipes down every single street? I've heard that rumor.
No.
Okay, good.
There will be some streets that will be fully disturbed. There will be several streets that'll be crossed as part of the construction. It will not be every street in the district. It may not even be every area where the drain currently is constructed. If we can get through and prove that there's a level of service at that 10-year level with the existing pipes and they're in good condition, they may be left as part of the project. This isn't a take everything out and put everything back.
Right.
As much of the system that can handle that level of service and can meet those design standards after regional detention is applied, that's all fair game to be left in the ground if the condition of those pipes is satisfactory.
There may have to be some pipe work over in Bretton Woods and the neighborhood north of there then, right?
So, and another thing to keep clear on is other systems are in other legally established county drains, and those
Right.
are not subject to construction as part of this project. So
We
this
are
is just
only
the bank.
working where it's on the blue line and the PowerPoint. If it's streets off of that, we don't have jurisdiction under this petition if it's a different drain to work on those.
Okay.
So it's
really
just limited to that.
Thomas L. I think that I saw the blue line going to Marmore.
Yeah.
In Barton,
Okay.
before it hits the river, yep.
So, our goal is to have this bid out in the fall. The quicker, if we can get it done, it's cheaper, instead of something languaging, it saves cost to get it done. And so we can give you updates as you wish. Again, we don't want to have any surprises. We can definitely do that before we put this out to bids to let you know, but we don't want anyone to hesitate. If you hear a rumor, come to us so that we can get you good information. We will be going to Delta Township regularly too, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yes.
So one thing, another misconception, and I think back to some detention ponds that I've seen throughout my life, kind of like what Hawk Island used to be. I think that used to be a detention pond. That was
Amy Chandler, I think, isn't it?
way back in the day. But for us who have, and even St. Gerard, I mean, they're baseball diamond and everything used almost every single day when it's warm out. With having a detention pond even nearby, what's the heightened risk for more mosquitoes?
I'm going to give a very lawyer-like answer. It depends.
Yeah.
We're working through all of that with Delta Township Park. So, like I said, Chris and I have done many, many projects together, and we can show some examples of other detention basins that have become like a feature with walking trails and different things, and it's not an issue at all. And so we'll be going through that process with Delta Township to look at that. What Mother Nature does in terms of rainfall and things like that, I can't make any promises. But we are very aware that this is going to be a big part of the community, and we don't want to have it look like, so to speak, your grandma's detention basin where it's a big hole with a fence around it. We're going to, but at the same time, meet the needs of the community in terms of drainage.
Yeah, and I know that in the current state, like for instance, it's not just me that lives in that district, I have other family too, and their backyard, for any major rain, it floods. There's about 6 inches of standing water. Kids can't go play out in the backyard, major mosquito risk.
You have to disclose it when you're selling your house.
Well,
Types of things,
yeah.
So the other thing I want everybody to be aware of, especially the residents in Delta Township, this is a 10-year storm design. We're seeing storms bigger than 10 years, so I don't want anybody to think this is going to solve every problem in the world in terms of drainage. This is going to provide 10-year protection, not for massive storm events. We're still going to have situations where we're good. And it's the outlet. It's not, so what I mean by that is we're providing an outlet for 10-year protection, but your street drain might not be up to a 10-year. That's not part of our project. So there's not going to be any more flooding in Delta Township. That's not what this project does. It provides a 10-year outlet.
But I think in the current state even, it would be hard pressed for those who have lived in the neighborhood for more than 5 years. It doesn't take much to overwhelm the system right now.
Correct.
No, you're absolutely correct. The less than, can't hold 1 year right now.
Yeah, and if that outletting system becomes inundated, there is nowhere for anything connected to it, to drain into. So a lot of the residents that we've talked to on Theo and Iris, sort of on the western part of the district, have very real, regular concerns about, flooding and standing water. And, there's been some maintenance recently on those separate systems in those areas. But with the completion of this project, there will be an available outlet for a much, much higher level of service than what's there today. So having the opportunity and the capacity for that water to drain out, if it comes into those systems, is going to be way larger after the project than it is today. So it will benefit every sub district and sub catchment within this drainage district. There's not going to be construction everywhere, though. The construction will just be on the outlet.
So you sat for an hour before we got here, and we've been talking for an hour, and you've all been really great about paying attention to, not everybody likes to hear about drains and listen, so truly, truly thank you for your time and for your attention.
Well, I do have one concern. I was debating whether to bring it up, but you just did, so I'll touch on it. I mean, we know, based on what the scientists tell us, is that we have a climate crisis in the world. 100-year storms are happening every 5 years. My question is, given that we are doing little or nothing about the climate crisis per se, are you doing too little for what the environment's going to look like in the next 10, 15, 20 years? I still read on a regular basis that if we don't, as a world, step up and start doing something, the tipping point is somewhere the end of this decade, which I think we're probably going to go past. So, I mean, you're looking at a 10-year storm, but we're getting much worse than that.
I'm gonna start and then I'll let you clean it up. So there has to be a balance with, if I use the word affordability, people might laugh at me when they're looking at these types of assessments that I don't even want to use the word for it. We're already a significant cost to them. And then anything above a 10-year is going to be, for this type of project, getting close to the unaffordable. So when we looked at this big picture, because one of my goals, I look at things that you did in Eaton County 100 years ago, and one of my goals, I know Chris's goal, is to not have the people, your successors, call you names, like, why did you do that? And so I think that question is very well. I think what we're gonna have to look at for the future, for the Briggs, for those other drains, is working more on storage in those smaller pockets. We're creating some big pockets of storage. And then the drain commissioners have some legislation called Chapter 22, which is stormwater management, which helps create more pockets of storage to deal with climate resiliency issues. So that what that means is, in the future, we know this is going to be a problem. Pipe becomes unaffordable, but we can use the whole watershed to store in tiny places in people's yards, et cetera. And I think it's going to come up to doing that more rather than getting bigger and bigger pipe. So I'm comfortable. I mean, it's a balance of how big do you go, how much is it going to cost, and I think it's going to end up being a decades-long challenge in this community on those tributary drainage systems to get storage. And that's where the goal would be. Would you?
Yeah, and just to speak to the more technical side of it, to say the information as input to those projects when they were built in the 30s and 40s, we're taking these more intense storms as our inputs today. So seeing storms become more intense and having new standards for how much depth of rainfall does that, is defined by that storm. Taking that most up-to-date information as our input is where we're starting. But having it, as Stacy mentioned, the balance, and having the balance in the level of service and the cost. We don't design to convey a 100-year storm. The pipes wouldn't fit in the ground to do that. And if there's a 100-year storm, there's water everywhere, all throughout the region. So it's looking at the most up-to-date data, having that be there as a utility to accept improvements into the future. I think is a starting point for for this area to have an outlet. If someone south of 43 wanted to have a stormwater outlet without these larger systems being there, being available, having capacity, even if it's just the modern standard design capacity is better than the leftovers of the 1930s capacities that are still in the ground. I think that's still a large benefit for the district.
I gather from your comments that you're at least looking at and anticipating that we're going to have significant changes in the climate that would need to be dealt with. Your answer seems to suggest that you are looking at alternatives other than just pipe.
Yeah,
So there's some cognizance of the fact that things are changing?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, with the legislature updates coming and having more options to address, stormwater needs, that doesn't constitute a project on a stormwater outlet. Because county drains everywhere, are typically the stormwater outlet. They don't feed every property specifically in a general sense. They are there as the outlet, the regional outlet in that community. So you can't solve everything at the outlet, and that's what these other programs are kind of alluding to. And having them be part of the drain code, it becomes another tool for drain commissioners.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think just to close this out, give it the comment that Commissioner Brayler had. I mean, we can't even move one-year storms right now. So, I mean, this is a lot better. I mean, we can't control the future of what cataclysms might come in the future, but like we can't even move one-year stormwater right now. So this is an improvement.
And I think you're just like going to get the gold star for all these questions with regard to the issues that we've been looking at. We recognize it's a first step. It's a huge step. People will see relief, but it's a first step. So.
And I would like to piggyback. I'm pleased that Commissioner Youngquist is here because most of this drain goes through his district. I mean, it just happens. But I'm also a property owner in the district, and I can attest to the problems that we have there. It really is, the roads are shut down on just what I would consider small storms sometimes. So, I'm going to be paying the piper on my taxes, but I know that the benefit is there, and I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to interacting through the township mostly, because that's where you guys won't be back to us much, but the township will be heavily involved, and I'll certainly be involved with them on this project, so thank you.
Thank you for your time and attention. Have a good day.
It's been most informative.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we got, our next item's item 10, right?
Yes, and next, it's just the report of when your semi-annual reports for each entity will be. So it's just for your information.
Just a reminder, it was what was passed at the board meeting.
January 2nd, board meeting.
And then E-Tran?
The E-Tran report is just for information only for you to review, and E-Tran will be giving their report next month to answer any questions related to this.
So we're down to limited public comments?
Yes. The only thing I did want to note, I added the master plan to the Board of Commissioners Dropbox. I also had Lori email it out. It was on the report provided by Chris and Brandy, but it was a link, so it wasn't apparent to everyone. That's all. That's my fault for not sending it out separately.
We're down to, you in a hurry, Blake? You got your hat on. We're down to, oh, come on. Limited public comments. Any limited public comments? Does somebody have something to say? Okay. I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
Thanks for coming.
Lord, all in favor, say aye. Yep, meeting's adjourned. This has been a very informative, that drain, it really drains like that.